This is a really interesting one that I wanted to go through sort of carefully. It's another place, there are two places where Je Tsongkapa himself uses this quotation. So I thought you might like to hear that. And it happens to be from a secret text, but I'm just going to do a little piece, so it doesn't matter. Kirim tar chins and zorim sewenki par toba shiki tse dela chipasum kanrun che gyu ma chungna. Let's suppose somebody has completed their kirim practice, okay? And in their dzogchen practice, they've got up to semwen, which is a certain part of higher tantric practice. Se dela chipasum kanrun che gyu ma chung. They didn't do the three activities, which we'll talk about later. Chiwe dusu, but at the moment of their death, chiwa usel dundabe dembangundu cha. They are able to link into the clear light of death, which is ultimate reality. They're able to link into that. He doesn't say directly necessarily, but anyway. Shivetar, then when they die, at the end of the death process, Gyumekur Dangwar, Chao, they should think to themselves, I want to enter an angel's body. I want to enter an angel's body, okay? Pembatang. Pembatang means what? Make that resolution. It's like, decide that that's what you want to be. Then what? Then die. Okay, Shina. Okay, if you do that, says Je Tsongkapa. This is all secret stuff, but it's okay. Chiwe rimba nam usa to jube rimba chene. Chiwe usa to chara gyurn. Then you will go through the various stages of death. You will enter the clear light of death. And then, de tu shenla badu jupe tse. Then, in the next few minutes, in the time that other people would be entering Bardo, like the scary place between death and rebirth, right? Bardo. De la. Instead of that, this means as a replacement for that. Okay? De la gulu drup. You will get your rainbow body. You'll get your angel's body. Okay? And I've only brought this quotation up because I want you to be really, really clear that if you can see emptiness directly, it's intimately and automatically, and it can even be suddenly related to becoming an angel. You see? Reaching an angel's body. He's talking about higher level of an Arya. Okay? And later on, Je Tsongkapa says, look, well, I'll give it to you. Then he discusses how that takes place, and he quotes from a scripture called the Activities or something like that. It's a tantric scripture. Somebody asks a question, is it possible, instead of entering the bardo, to become Vajradhara, or Vajrapani, to enter that body? And then he gives a long explanation of why that is possible and why it will happen. And this is Vajradhara talking to an unknown questioner, okay, in this tantra. Then he says, Gyulu Tobna, if you are able then to attain the angel's body, the body of light, it's been stated that Sedela, in that same life, you'll become a Buddha. So like you can't get the miracle body, the rainbow body, and not become a Buddha in the same life. So he's telling you, if you want to get to the rainbow body, especially during the death process, you must see emptiness directly. Like you have to try really hard to see what they call the clear light of death and transform that into a direct perception of emptiness, okay? And then you can get the rainbow body, and then if you get that, you just become a deity. In that, you become a Buddha in that same life. Di gyulu ma tobla, ngunsum de togna gyulamale. But let's say you don't manage to achieve rainbow body, but you do manage to perceive emptiness directly, clear light directly. Well then, as the Uttara Tantra says, Pape chi dan gawada nawe dungyao tsene pang. Okay, and then he goes through that quotation, same quotation. Leda nyoma wangi ke de la de me chi de me. Che, where'd that go? Che Techen Papa Namgi Legi Wangi Chiwa Pangbar Sung. It is stated in the Uttara Tantra that Mahayana Aryas have eliminated having to die through karma and kleshas, okay? Karma and mental afflictions. Dear Lewang Ki Chiwa Mapangshin Yoche Matsawe Deta Chepa Sumbe Kilu Matope Soso Kiwino. Then he goes through an interesting explanation of why, if you can see directly emptiness and have bodhicitta, then by the way, you avoid all these other problems, like never having enough money or stuff like that, okay? De Shiwe Oktu Kilu Topade Topade. Let's see if there's anything else here. Oh, and then he says the main point I wanted you to get that was this whole process about getting an angel body doesn't work unless you can see emptiness directly just before that. And anybody who says different is wrong. Okay, so he's like saying you gotta, to activate the angel body, you have to see emptiness directly before that. And this particular section, which is from one of his commentaries on Tantra in general, he's saying that if you want to get at death, you want to get the miracle body, rainbow body, you have to try to practice, and this is a practice found in the Vajrayogini, that, you know, Chiwa Chuku Lamkar, okay? Okay. I thought I'd throw in the other place where Je Tsongkapa uses this quotation is from his commentary on Guhya Samaja, which is in the Kagyu tradition where the Mahamudra comes from, and then leads into a lot of like what we're studying in the other class, Samanangdan. Okay. Yang Rinpa Shiba Tobne, if you can achieve the fourth level, Nawasum Nambar Dapar Sung, you'll experience the three visions, and you will see emptiness directly. Because the Gyulama says, because the Uttara Tantra says, and then he quotes the same quotation. Then he says, I like this one, and this is, I think, on your homework somewhere. As the Uttara Tantra says, Che Parchingi Techen Pakpe Kyang Le Wangi Chiwa Pambar Sungna, if it's true, as Lord Maitreya says, that people in the open teachings who see emptiness directly can get out of dying through karma and kleshas. Well, Ngaki Techen Pape de Pamba Tachimut means, needless to say, if you were practicing Tantra, then be no problem, would it? You know, if you saw emptiness directly and had bodhicitta, and we're practicing Tantra on top of that, well, just forget it, you know? And then he just leaves it like that. Okay, I like that quotation. Anyway. Then there are a lot of more, I'm going to have in the reading a lot more quotations about how it is that Aryas can have to take birth again. Let me see if I can find one that... Here's a writer, and it's, again, it's from our monastery. Changpad nam nyingje da menlangi wangi jitar de suke. Somebody says to him, there's an argument. If these people who see emptiness directly have to take 7 more lifetimes, then what makes them do it? You see? What is there that makes them do that? And there's a debate about it. And he says, I'll give you 2 choices. You know, the other guy seems to want to say they must have some kind of kleshas. They got to have some kind of mental afflictions. Otherwise they wouldn't take birth. You know? So that's where we're coming from. Somebody's saying, during those 7 lifetimes, they must have some kind of mental afflictions that are making them take birth. You don't take birth by accident. You know? It's not like you just take birth because of the momentum you're on from billions of past lives. I mean, after you've seen emptiness directly, why do you still have to take birth? And our guy gives the other guy 2 choices. He says, the other guy was sort of implying you need to have a mental affliction, right? He says, Champa nam ningje da menlangi wang ki jita du kiemi nupar. Du means any old way they want. Okay? He says, okay, so you're saying that these Bodhisattva Aryas, they can't just take any kind of birth they want through their compassion and their prayer, munlam, right? Okay, are you telling me that? Is that what you mean to say? And that somehow there's some kind of mental affliction making them do it, right? Okay, that's first choice. Okay, they can't do it by compassion and munlam. There must be some kind of mental affliction at work. That's the first choice I'll give you. Because the other guy said what? There must be some mental affliction involved there, okay? Then he says, I'll give you another choice. Wente means I'll give you another choice. Nyomo mi shekyang. Whether or not you agree that this is a mental affliction, Chi Poet said, at the time when you go into crossing the borderland between death and rebirth, okay? It's called Chi Poet say, Dakche dok jikbe. Everyone has this fear of losing their whole being, okay? Like the thing that makes you fight when somebody grabs you on a roof and pushes you, you know, or someone goes like that. And that automatic fear, it's what almost like Abhinivesha described in the Yoga Sutras sometimes that way. Jikpe sakcheki pumbala sepe sepa. Then you get some horrible attachment to this body. And then that throws you into another rebirth. You know, if you have that fear at the last moment, and you're like afraid that if you lose this body, you will disappear. I will disappear. Then that kind of fear is called sepa, gepa sepa in the wheel of life. Attachment, and then that throws you into the next rebirth. So he says, which way you want it? Which way you want it? Okay, he's debating this other guy. He says, which way was it? What was the first choice again? They got some kind of mental affliction, and they can't take rebirth the way they want, through compassion and prayer. Second choice? Whether or not they have a mental affliction, but they have this fear. And that's what throws them into the next rebirth. So, I mean, what we're debating here is like, we're already assuming you saw emptiness. What do you do next? How can you cut those 7 rebirths short? Okay, like we just went through the tantric explanation, right? But now we have this question. This is essential. Suppose you do see emptiness directly. You still want to spend 7 more lifetimes? You know? Maybe you could identify what's throwing you into a rebirth even after you see emptiness. And he says, so here's a debate. And he says, well, there's 2 choices. Either you can't take a rebirth where you want, or whether you call it a mental affliction, and some mental affliction's throwing you, or whether you call it a mental affliction or not, you've got some kind of fear about me, and that throws you into your next, okay? Which way do you want it? The guy might pick the second way. Why? Because it gets out of a problem. It gets out of a problem. What? That these Bodhisattva Aryas who have to take life 7 more times, and he doesn't want to admit that they might be able to do simply through their own compassion. And by the way, the compassion thing is a little, even to me, I don't know if I buy it. Why?
I want to get enlightened faster or something.
Well, that, and we know he has to take 7 more births. We know he's not a Drachomba. He's not an Arhat, right? He's not an Arhat. I mean, if you could just see emptiness directly and then immediately take any birth you want, it sounds like an Arhat to me. It sounds like a person who's like years and years beyond seeing emptiness directly. So what's the difference? I mean, why do you have to go through the whole path of habituation? Where's that 500 years? Where'd it go? If the guy can just take birth anywhere he wants, then where'd that 500 years go, you know? I mean, I don't know if I buy it, okay? So anyway, he says, then our guy doesn't give the other guy a chance to answer anyway. He says, either way it's wrong, because either way it would contradict statements that these Arya Bodhisattvas have destroyed any being forced to do things through kleshas. So what our guy is saying is, look, whether you call that fear a klesha or not, I call it a klesha. It's a mental affliction, okay? And if your description was right, you know, if a bodhisattva, Arya, had to take rebirth through any kind of mental afflictions, Shenden Gyachembutasho means forget the idea that he's helping others in a big way. Rangdunyan Dupashin Madupecha. He can't do what he wants to do for himself. You know, he can't even do what he wants to do. What are you talking about, bodhisattva who's acting for all living beings? They can't even keep their own rear end out of samsara, out of some more births. Okay? Now you got to debate that, right? These are all like, they're not all quite matching each other. They're all giving a different angle. I think if you spend like a week or 2 reading it, you could probably reconcile them all, but I'm not sure. I'm going to skip the next one. Yeah, that's about the same. I'll skip the next one too. Oh, this is a good one. This is by Sarah Jetson. Sarah Jetson is the author of the textbook series from the lower college of Sarah. No, just kidding. Sarah J. Okay. And he was the teacher of the author of our textbooks, Kirup Dhammadargye. And there's a tradition that according to us, Kirup Dhammadargye outgrew his teacher, which is almost sort of a little touchy subject, right? And according to the Sarah Jepas, Kirup Dhammadargye was sort of a maverick who just kind of wandered away from the party line, which seems to typify Sarah May Lamas by tradition. But anyway, however way you see it, Kachik, Chansen Papa Koa Kira Lembe Gyur. Somebody says, look, there is a mental affliction that arises in the mind of a Bodhisattva Arya, which makes them take rebirth in samsara. There is a mental affliction. Now, that's a kachik, which means what? The other guy, which means we don't buy it, okay?
So this is the qualm.
Yeah, it's like the koan, or the qualm. Okay. Oh, so you're telling me there's a Bodhisattva Arya who is forced to take rebirth out of karma and mental afflictions, right? Sarna? Yabata. He says, teacher, I didn't say that. Damcha Tepitir. But you started out with what you started out with. You said there's a mental affliction which makes him take rebirth, right? And he says, yeah. So he's taking rebirth because he's forced through mental afflictions, right? It's no. Okay. Dumi dute. You can't agree that he's forced to take a rebirth through karma and mental afflictions because this book says something else. Which book? Uttara Tantra. Then he throws in this quotation again. I just want you to get the feeling that this quotation has probably been used more than any other quotation from the Uttara Tantra because it's so vital, it's so important. Suppose I do see emptiness directly. Well, what's my status? How is it that I get an angel's body? How long will it really take? Okay? Does tantric practice help? And then our guy figured that's enough. He doesn't go on. That's enough. But then he throws in another debate. Konare, which means kachik. Chansen papa korokiro lembe gyurgyupi nyomon chen yoba ta. There is too a mental affliction that makes the guy take birth again. Because he's got a nyun dip. Nyun dip is what? Dippa is an obstacle, okay? Dippa. Like we have the capacity to see every living being in the universe. You have the capacity to read my mind at any given time. Whether you are now, I don't know. But everyone has that capacity in this room. And then there's this somewhere block. There's a wall. If you break through that wall, you can do all those things. Like, in principle, you can perceive everything happening in the universe. In principle, anybody in this room, if you saw emptiness directly today, on a bodhisattva path, you would see every living creature in the universe. In 1 minute. In 1 minute. But there's some kind of block. You see, there's some kind of wall. If you can break it down, that's called shedip. Okay? Shedip means, sheje dipa means, it blocks you from the ability to know all things at the same time. Okay? As opposed to a nyundrup, which is a nyomong dipa, which is what? Mental affliction obstacle, which only prevents you from what? Achieving nirvana. Okay? So mental affliction obstacle just means something that keeps you from achieving nirvana where you don't have to take rebirth again at all, for example. And shedip is what? Prevents you from reaching omniscience. Omniscience, okay? Okay, so now that you know that, this guy says, there is a mental affliction in the guy's mind that makes him take one of those 7 births, right? Because he's got a mental affliction obstacle. We say, no, he doesn't. And he says, yeah, he does, because he has a omniscience obstacle.
that's not necessarily...
Right, kyabamachum. Say kyabamachum. Doesn't follow. Doesn't follow. Doesn't necessarily follow. You can have an obstacle to your omniscience, but have gotten over your obstacles to nirvana, right? I mean, we know that, but he makes a slip, luckily. And then the other guy says, he does too have an omniscience obstacle. And then he says something very powerful. Because he's still at the level where he has the seed for ignorance. He's still at the level where he has the seed for ignorance. Is that a mental affliction? No, we talked about it before today. It's an energy. It's an energy. It's not mental. Okay? Anyway, but the other guy is saying the seed for ignorance is an obstacle to omniscience and not to becoming an arhat. Is that true? The question is, do you get rid of your seeds for your ignorance when you become an arhat?
No, because you're not omniscient.
That's touchy. What kind of ignorance are we talking about? The one that sees that things as self-existent, you get over. That's the last thing you get over, right? And the seeds for it. Or do you get rid of the seeds for it? What do you do between the 8th and 10th Bodhisattva levels? Long story. Okay, anyway. He seems to be saying that this seed represents the thing that blocks you from reaching Buddhahood. Omniscience obstacle. Okay, the seed, not the ignorance itself. Ignorance itself is already gone. Okay. Then I chance Papa Kora Kira Lembe Gira Gibi Nyomong Yu. Then Nyomong Giwangi Kora Kira Milen. Therefore, he says, according to me, this guy has a mental affliction that's going to make him take birth again. But he's not taking birth to the power of mental afflictions. It supports me. Supports me. Okay? And then, anyway, the bottom line is that the author from Sarah J says that, what if we treat the energies in that Bodhisattva Arya's mind as obstacles to omniscience? The energies for ignorance, the seeds for ignorance in that Bodhisattva's mind, what if we treat them as obstacles to omniscience? Okay? Would they still take birth? Rebirth. He's trying to say, let's classify them as something that's not mental affliction, but that still make them take birth. Does that help us with our problems today? What's the Uttara Tantra say? He's not going to take birth again because they don't have it, so they don't have it. Meaning what? They don't have mental afflictions and karma, so they're not going to take rebirth. Now, Sarah J. Guy is saying, what if we classify those seeds that make him take birth again as not mental affliction obstacles, but omniscience obstacles? Then is he still taking rebirth? Yeah, because we know he has to be because he's a seven-timer. He's a seven-timer. And then can we say he doesn't have mental afflictions?
Yes.
Yeah. We got out of it. That's a Sarah J, okay? Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. You got to chew on it. But you get the point. He's saying Uttara Tantra is right. Seven lifer is right. Taking rebirth is right. Being truth of suffering is right. Not being samsara is right. Not being forced by karma and kleshas to take rebirth is right. But having to take rebirth is right. Through something mental affliction sort of thing, which means the obstacle to omniscience, which is the seeds of the ignorance, okay? So now you see how different authors over hundreds of years are shooting guns at each, they're like, how about if we do it this way? Does that, what do you call it? Reconcile all these ideas, okay? So think about it. Think about it. I think it's just a classification trick. Anyway, but not necessarily wrong. I don't know. And there's a couple more from Sarah J, but we don't need those. Just kidding. Here's a little thing I threw in towards the end. I think this is maybe the last thing. Let me check. Yeah, this is the last thing. I just threw this in at the end for fun, okay? This is from a Lam Rim text. It's a commentary to a Lam Rim that was written by the first Panchen Lama, whose name is Losang Chukyi Gyaltsen. And people confuse him with Sarah Jetson Chukyi Gyaltsen, who's the textbook author from Sarah J. So people say Chukyi Gyaltsen, you have to say, which Chukyi Gyaltsen? And you say Sarah Jetson Chukyi Gyaltsen. Oh, the Sarah textbook writer. Or they say Panchen Losang Chukyi Gyaltsen. And then it means the Panchen Lama. But anyway, we're talking about Panchen Lama. He wrote a Lam Rim called the Easy Way. Like the short, almost like the easy path. Okay. Delam. I don't know if it's been translated yet. Anybody know? If it hasn't been, I think it'd be cool to do it for the first year of the Tantric series. Because I have a connect. I like Panchen Losang Chukyi Gyaltsen. He was a great writer and a great poet. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's translated. It's not very long, and it'd be a great Lam Rim for us to do as the first year of the Tantric series. So we'll either do that or the fifth Dalai Lamas. I don't know. Whatever's available by then, or, whichever. This one is kind of, to me, I have a connection with it. Anyway, he says, really, if you think about it, people shouldn't get stuck in middle level capacity, meaning what?
Wanting to abandon cyclic existence to end one's suffering.
Yeah, okay. Out of,
Nirvana.
Little capacity, medium capacity, big capacity, Lam Rim, right? They call it greater scope, lesser scope, medium scope. Okay, something fancy like that. Of all the people in history who are watching out for their own rear end, okay, something like that. Taksha, the best, the very best were Nyentu Choksung. Nyentu Choksung means, who is that? I think it's Shariputra and Modgalyayana. These two great disciples of Lord Buddha. They were great disciples in which turning of the wheel?
The second.
Could be.
Heart Sutra.
Yeah.
I guess you could say the Heart Sutra. Yeah, you can say that. But anyway, they're known for having been there at the first one mostly. And they're known as having been Theravadan. Those two guys. Yeah. They're known, I think it's those two. I don't think it's Ananda. I think it's Mogakipur and Shariputra. Anyway, they're known as being Theravadan usually. He says the best of the people who weren't bodhisattvas yet had to be those two. Okay? They spent their whole lives trying to achieve their own goals. And not only did they not help to achieve others' goals, they didn't get their own. Okay? Like he's putting them down. Okay? In this Lam Rim. Why? They had an opportunity to view the hell realms. There was some kind of controversy involving a non-Buddhist teacher and some letter he wrote to his disciples or something. Anyway, as a result of this conversation, Modgalyayana got punched. Okay? Chaksha tamche dambar tar chomni chomwayinla. And he tied up his feet and legs. I'm sorry. He crushed his feet and arms. He crushed his arms and legs like you would a house of reeds. Remember that? And he died. Mogakippu died. Whereas, if he had been a bodhisattva, and if he had seen the emptiness directly, he never would have had any of these problems. Okay? Because people who see emptiness directly and who are bodhisattvas just don't get these problems. Because Uttara Tantra says, all right? So now you see how this quotation is being used by many, many different people. And it's, it's just a short class, not really, but I just want you to get the feeling for how Arya Asanga has infiltrated all of Tibetan Buddhism. You see, from Tantric angle, from Lam Rim angle, from Perfection of Wisdom angle, almost anything you read has Uttara Tantra in it, whether you know it or not. So here he's using it for a different reason. He's using the quotation for a different reason. Then he says, Dena shenyan kepe tepachempo chigute. Therefore, if you're going to be a good teacher for other people, get them right into talking about emptiness and karma. Okay? Get them right into talking about emptiness. If you're going to not waste people's time, get them right into emptiness and karma. I like that. And then he quotes Potoa, who's a famous Kadampa, who said the same thing. Okay? Says, don't waste people's time, don't fool around, don't monkey around. Get them straight into karma and emptiness. Get them to Bodhisattva Arya. Right? So that's all I'm going to do on that. I think especially it'd be nice for you to review the statements about the tantric part, and how you can use clear light to achieve the same thing that on a tantric level, tantric path, that someone using the ACI courses would on a sutra class. The courses so far on a sutra path. Okay, so really, the 18 courses that are coming up next fall are for getting to the second kind of Arya. Okay, who can use tantric practices to shorten the time. Okay, to get to the same thing. Okay, we'll stop there. All right, we'll do prayers. We're going to hit in August, during those 3 classes, we'll hit Rik, Kam, which is what?
Buddha nature.
Buddha nature. It's the guts of the Uttara Tantra. I mean, this is very heavy part of Uttara Tantra, but really the heaviest part is Buddha nature. The main subject in there is Buddha nature. And I thought we would go over some of the views of emptiness held by other schools in Tibet, like specifically Shentong, which is one Kagyu approach to emptiness, which is wrong, but which is useful to study, I think. And I think by the time you get through with that, you'll know more about Shentong than the Shentongists. And that's very useful for being able to talk to people. You know, people get, what do you call it? No, they get like, that comes with it. People say like, I believe in Shentong, and not empty. I don't believe that emptiness is a lack of something. And you're like, well then what is Shentong? And they say, well, I don't know, but I heard, and then, you gotta be able to say, well, what you believe is this, and this, and here's the scriptures of your own. That's what we do in debate. You study Jaebung and Ganden scriptures, and then they start spouting something. You say, oh, you got that from so-and-so, right? And they say, yeah, that's what we believe. I say, yeah, but even according to that scripture, you can't accept it, And then they're like, oh yeah, and then, in the monastery, you debate. One very important method is to really learn the system that the other people hold. Like if you're going to if you say, I hold Madhyamika, I believe in Madhyamika, then you say, well, why don't you believe in mind only? And they say, well, because mind only is lower than Madhyamika, And you say, well, why? And they say, well, I don't know, but I hold Madhyamika, And then if you're really going to be a good Madhyamikan, you got to know mind only well, And you say, well, here's why mind only, here's the points on which mind only differs from Madhyamika, So what I thought to do is we'll do a similar thing as we did today on Shentong from many different scriptures, and we'll throw in Shentong from some of the classic Kagyu sources that present it. And then we'll just thrash it out, We'll thrash it out. We'll see both sides like that. And then that carries over into Buddha nature. That idea of emptiness is responsible for their view on Buddha nature, which we've read in Samonangdun. We're studying a very beautiful scripture by one of the early Karmapas, which is very good and powerful. But I thought we'd throw that in there also. And you can get, from the horse's mouth, you can get this idea about Buddha nature that we don't agree with, but which is a very beautiful presentation, and most importantly, what? No, useful. It's useful. It's useful. Like, you got to have all these tools in your toolbox, you know? There might come a day when you run into a student who's just got to hear that one, you know? And you teach it to them, you know? You don't mention the real idea of emptiness. You go straight to, oh yeah, there is a little Buddha inside of you. And, you know, like I was at the prison yesterday, and you just see the level of the people that are there, and then you have to shift. You have to do tange immediately. And so you got to have in your toolbox everybody's idea about emptiness. And it's funny, you know, you might, like I'm going to a yoga center, this big yoga center, you know, and so I presented Yoga Sutra way, or I presented Hatha Yoga Pradipika way, or I don't jump right into Nagarjuna or Chandrakirti, because they don't believe in that. So you learn Yoga Sutra well, you learn Hatha Yoga Pradipika well, and then you present it that way. And then when they grasp it, then you bring them up, right? That was the point of the Uttara Tantra itself, right? The first 3 books were what? Mind only. But he said that you had to have them for certain people to get them up to Madhyamika. So we'll do all of everybody's idea about emptiness and Buddha nature. And then you'll be well loaded by the time of October. But you got to look over this stuff now. Also, I'll send readings to LA after my vacation, but before I get back. So, you know, you'll have those. Okay? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, you can email them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We love you very much. On behalf of everyone, your teachings are amazing. And, please come back.
Oh, yeah.
Continue teaching.
No, I'd much rather be here than anywhere else. I mean, this is the place I'm at the place in my life, and I think those of you who are over 40, you should start thinking that way too, where, you know, you gotta be in a place where you can do long, deep retreats and concentrate. So I'm happy. I think that's the right place to be right now. Okay? And the chanting courses are being held here, so.